Well, welcome to another episode of the Business is Mission podcast. I'm here with two new friends, but we have some old friends in common, Bill and Dana Wichterman. They're resident in D.C. I'll give you a little bit of background on them, but I'm going to let them tell their story. Bill is currently a senior advisor with a company out of Washington, Covington and Burling. And prior to that, he's got a long background in government and other in finance as well. My favorite part of this, two things. One, you can tell more about it, but he was advisor to George W. Bush, special assistant to the president. And then he was chief of staff for a congressman that I knew. And we have another, to me, very special common friend in Joe Ketz, who was congressman from a district in Pennsylvania that I visited with a good friend of mine and got to meet the congressman. Great guy, man of faith. Passionate for the Lord and for a lot of the causes we all believe in. And then Dana was telling me she's got a background. It's as long as Bill's and more complex and impressive. I hate to say that, Bill, but it's a pretty strong pedigree. She's worked in foreign aid. She's worked in, now works for the Impact Foundation. She's worked in all kinds of things overseas. She studied abroad. She said something, and we were getting to know each other before the call that really struck me. We all share a belief that business is not the solution, but it is a big part of the solution to global poverty and a chance to express kingdom values in real life. And so we one of these days we're going to be together, whether it's in Washington or down in my mountain town in near Asheville, and we're going to talk about all this stuff in detail. But for now, it's really a delight to have you guys on the show.
Great to be here. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
So let me start off by just saying or asking you a question, I guess, and that is, I don't believe in burying the lead. That's the old newspaper guy in me that says, get your point in the first paragraph. So from each one of you, not one for the other, but each one of you, what is the one thing that you would really like to see our audience take away from this conversation that says, yeah, we should listen for the next 30 or 40 minutes. This is going to be worthwhile.
Well, I'll start. When we pray daily, may your kingdom come. I think that is us praying for how God wants to direct us individually and as a couple or as a family into those broken spots that sin has either destroyed or harmed. But he gives us the ability, gives us the resources and the talent and the ears to hear, to go into those broken places and fix that wall and bring in that beautiful artwork that needs to inspire people. And, all those different things, we're all equipped for that. And that's what we were made for. So I think that's our joy when we step into those. So this is what I'm hoping that people see when the entrepreneurs and investors out there that listen to Business's Mission can see that they're part of bringing his kingdom come.
Dana, that's so good. I'm afraid people are going to turn the podcast off at this point. That's fantastic. Thank you. And Bill, how about for you? What's the one point you really hope the audience walks away with?
Well, I think it's something that your audience might get already, Mike, though, but it's namely that thinking about the pot of money that's at our disposal for most of us, that's much larger and frankly is lying fallow. Think of it like a field, a farmer's field. And you got this one little strip of land you're cultivating and you're growing things and you're feeding your family or whatever you're doing. And then you got another like 80 or 90% of land out there that you're not cultivating, that could be cultivated. So that metaphor is that little strip of land is our charitable giving. For many people, it's 10%. We think that should be a floor. But there's also all this other investable assets that are ready to be deployed thoughtfully, as opposed to just deployed saying, well, here's my risk tolerance. You tell your broker, here's what I want to, and that is not as meaningful as if you can think about both negative screens and positive screens for your investments. So you're thinking what investments are going to have a redemptive edge. That's a huge pot of money that Christians are sitting on. We often need to go raise money for a nonprofit or something, and you think, man, how are we going to raise all these millions of dollars needed? In this case, this is money already under our control, just sitting there, not being thoughtfully deployed.
again, same thing, right? I could stop right now and just say, guys, go down and do likewise. That would be a good application. But you also written a book about this, and I'm going to give a quick plug for that. We'll start with that, but then I want to circle back to the 2 points that you guys just made. It's called Stewards, Not Owners. So obviously, it's about how believers should be thinking about what God has entrusted to us. And the subtitle is The Joy of Aligning Your Money with Your Faith, which to me speaks to exactly what, Bill, you just shared. There you go. You can all see it on screen. There it is. And it aligns with this idea that, there's in the Christian community, there's this massive pot of investment dollars and then there's a small pot. It's still sizable, but there's a small pot of charitable dollars. And in the minds of believers, we never mix those two. We never think of investing our investable dollars in kingdom purposes that are real investments. And by the same token, we don't think of putting our charitable dollars into any sort of overseas or poverty focused business endeavors. We just have this weird divide. So talk about that, but talk about the book. What led you to write it? You guys got it. It just came out, a month ago?
No, tomorrow.
Oh, well, let's timestamp this, okay?
It comes out March 11.
Yeah, and this probably will not come out for another 6 to 8 weeks, so it will be a couple of months ago. I did not know that. So, but the listeners know. So by the time you hear this podcast, it's available in your bookstores, through Amazon, and so forth. So tell us about the book you guys wrote, what led you to write it, a little bit of what it's about. Obviously, we want to read it, but give us your take on it.
Well, I think our concern for Christians to live responsibly because that could live in freedom. So you think that financial discipline and budgeting and all those kind of things sound restrictive and that it's taking away your freedom. And what we've found, and what I think all believers know, that when you obey the Lord and do things His way, that it actually brings you more freedom. So Bill and I have tussled and wrestled with this concept of biblical lens view towards finances since we were first married. We used Crown Financial Ministries, Larry Burkett's work to kind of say, very basics: live below your means, save 10%, give 10%, that kind of thing. So starting even your whole life before you set yourself into certain kind of lifestyle, certain kind of choices. So that was one thing. We also think that it's one of the ways to release people from poverty in the U.S. church. So it's not just for overseas. There's a lot of people that live stressfully, paycheck to paycheck, when they don't need to, if they would follow these biblical principles. So that's one reason we've always wanted to wrestle with it. And then the other is because we do see that even Christians with means don't maybe think through, like you said, of harmonizing all of their capital, their charitable capital, their investable capital, all towards mission, all maybe with a different kind of, quadruple bottom line, and your investments for your retirement, they do have to make money. And that there's no shame in that. That's a good thing. God created business to create money, but it means you can also look at it to make sure those businesses are doing no harm and some of them are possibly doing a good in terms of, like you said, missional. It is very possible for business to both make money and have a good mission in the world. This is what God created business for, was for human flourishing. So of course businesses can do good in the world.
The stories of that, Dana, there's hundreds of them now. There didn't used to be a lot of them. You had to look, you have to go back in history to the Basel International Trading Company, and, the Moravians who sold themselves into slavery in the East Indies. All these different stories were really hard to find. Now, in the world of business as mission, we're starting to hear of real for-profit businesses, not just little cottage industry things, not little subsistence farms, but actual real businesses employing people, dozens, hundreds, in some cases several thousand, but they are not just producing income, not just producing a good product, but they're doing good. They're making community impact. And so when you say that, it's just, having been at this now since the days of the collapse of the Soviet Union, watching it come to fruition, it really makes my heart smile that we're all starting to see, because you guys have been at this a long time too, we're all starting to see the beginning of business impact. And Dana, I'm going to come back and ask you a question about something you said in a minute, but go ahead. And Bill, your take on the book too. I know you guys do it together. It's obviously you're very much one, but when you think about it, the writing the book, what led you to it? What are you hoping to accomplish?
Yeah. So for us, we started thinking right at the beginning of our marriage 35 years ago about how we align our faith and our money. And it was embryonic then. And for us, it was an expression of like keeping track of all of our expenses. It was tithing on gross, first fruits, setting up a generosity fund of 1% so we could be generous with people in our lives and not just feel like, oh, it's got to go to a church, but like, and we were very budgeted and we thought, where's the room for that? So those were just baby steps. I mean, we were $13,000 underwater, our negative net worth, lived in without a car when we got married and an apartment with cockroaches. But we still, right from the beginning, I remember being struck by the fact that what we do with our money is like the tangible expression of our faith, because it's not the only one, but it's very tangible. Jesus said, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And your money really shows where your treasure is. And I think it's one thing to have a profession of faith and a doctrinal statement, what you believe. Show me your credit card bill. Show me your checkbook. Let's see where money's going. Let's see where your treasure really is. And so that has been a growing thing for us. In the beginning, it was just about being responsible, saving money, living below our means, hugely important, keeping track of all our expenses. Then as our wealth grew, we thought a lot about, okay, now how do we be philanthropic? How do we grow above just the 10% tithe plus 1 for generosity? And we started adding a percentage per year. But then the next step came. And that next step was, wait, what can we do with all of our investable assets? That which is in our donor advised fund, that's which is outside of it. And that's when we both got so excited about business as mission. And we got so excited thinking about how we can change the world. And it's not just like, sorry, I'm going so long here, Mike. It's not just that there's more money to go to business as mission. Very often it's more effective. Very often the way you change the world is going to be through the crucible of the profit motive, which is not a dirty word. Profit is built into the creation mandate. We didn't plant a seed so we could harvest a seed. God made it pre-fall, so we'd plant a seed and harvest lots more than that. That's profit.
Profit's a very biblical concept. And for some reason, I've noticed business people check their brains at the door when they go into a church building, and they forget so many things that God taught on the outside, they're still true on the inside. And that's one of them, right? It goes all the way back to the very beginning. And I even, if you look at the Hebrew of Genesis 1, we're meant to, people say we're manage the world. It's exploit. The word is exploit, but it's not an evil word because it simply means use what is there to an outcome, right? It's just utilization, but it's become a nasty word. Profit has become a nasty word. But the truth is God's given us creation to use for our good and the good of our fellow man. And if we do that well, we will actually we'll have more at the end than less. Think about a closed-end system that God would have created a system that once we gave it all, the system shut down. But that's not what he created. He created a sustainable, growable, scalable system, which sounds a lot like a business, doesn't it?
Exactly.
But what you said, Bill, you guys jump in at any time. Don't wait to be called on, please. But Dana, you said something a minute ago before we got started. What Bill just said true for me, that the pathways of change, the approach to change, the philosophy of change, and with your background in government and foreign aid, look, we all believe in charity. I believe in charity. I love to help people. My wife literally this morning paid a neighbor's electric bill so her power wouldn't get turned up. That's fine. Sometimes that's just what you do. But I would far rather find a job for her where this would not happen. And so you said you were kind of contrasting charity and business as you set that up. So come back to that, what we said earlier, what you started on, because it ties to what Bill just said. You guys, it's obvious that you've been aligned in your marriage together. So play with that a little bit, Dana, please.
Yeah. So I would say I started discovering that market-based solutions were one of the more effective ways to alleviate poverty overseas. And I call it almost poverty prevention. Once you provide jobs, you provide an enabling environment so those businesses can thrive. A legal environment, a business regulatory environment, the businesses can thrive and do what they're supposed to do. Then you actually create jobs. That's how middle class starts raising everyone's votes. And that really does work. That's worked for most countries. It's working for India. It's working for China. And the issue is when you pour too much foreign aid into what should just be humanitarian assistance, and everyone needs humanitarian assistance at times, whether it's some kind of weather result or some kind of tragedy or conflict. Absolutely. Charity is needed. But it should not be long term because it creates a dependency mindset. It takes people's agency away. They don't see how they can utilize their own resources, their own community to step into their God-given role to produce and make goods and services for their community. And so I think even a lot of money has been well-intentioned and has done a lot of harm. Our listeners probably know about Brian Fickert's seminal work of When Helping Hurts, or the book Toxic Charity. Again, neither of them are saying there should be no nonprofits. There certainly needs to be nonprofits, but nonprofits shouldn't veer into the area where for-profit should do better. And I would even say in the BAM world, there's a kind of a spectrum. There are some BAM businesses in really hard to start places that really face a lot of headwinds that may need catalytic capital. They may need some charitable concessional rates to get going because they face so many headwinds. And we really want to see those businesses go, but they shouldn't be on concessional capital for 20, 30 years, whereas then others, they can fly really soon and they just need capital because their capital markets are underdeveloped. So we would be, as investors, faith-driven investors, when we go in and say that business also has a wonderful gospel mission, I'm just excited about helping plant businesses that'll be there for decades after we're gone.
You'll appreciate this with your background in foreign aid and a lot of other things too. That tie into this, I started working in Kyrgyzstan back in right after the Soviet Union collapsed, and we were and I was not there as a missionary. I was there to teach the business side of medicine and healthcare at the State Medical Institute, because when the Soviets pulled out, they took the whole system with them. I mean, the Kyrgyz had nothing, and they took all the jobs, they took all the capital. I mean, you talk about a desolate country. Unemployment rate, the official rate was 31%. The real rate was about 71%. And in the little tiny fledgling Christian community, about 150 people in the whole country, well over 90%. And we realized quickly, there is that cup of cold water, right? You got to bring that humanitarian. You need some food, you need some shelter, all that's good. But then we needed to start thinking about, this is a bunch of ignorant business guys. We do nothing about nothing. And so we're saying, well, we got to start businesses. We've got to create jobs. Because if we don't, we can't feed this country. It's 5 million people. It's a small country. We can't feed it forever, right? So we started an incubator, and we started bringing in believers primarily to teach them about business and how to start business. But we had to your point, Dana, we had to bring in charitable capital. There was no investment capital, and frankly, an investor would look at this and go, "You're out of your mind, but I'll give you $100,000." That has changed. That set a flywheel in motion. That today there it's not done, but the economy there is evolved, it's healthy, and I saw it in a tiny little laboratory you just described. That all of the various entities, right? The cup of cold water just from a friend, the charity just from believers and non-believers too, just to help you out. You need help, and then let's start businesses, and that becomes self-generating. Bill, your head is nodding. You're obviously in agreement, but you look like, okay, I want to jump in here. So jump in.
there's so much to say about it. It's there's not enough money in the world to address the world's needs. There's not enough charitable money in the world to address the world's needs. And even if we were all doing 10% tithe as Christians, even if the whole world became 10% tithers, that's not enough to really change the world the way it needs to be changed. It needs to be people who are whose capital is lying fallow because they have no job. They're sitting under a tree in the developing world, sitting under a tree in the middle of the day. They have no access to a job. What's really exciting for us is give that person a job. I often think this is so impressive to me, assuming it's accurate. I had heard that 40% of wells in Africa are inoperative. And that's because people came in and said, oh my gosh, you have dirty water. Let's help you. We'll dig a well for you. But it turns out in many cases, and we're not against wells, we've paid for wells ourselves. In many cases, you're handing somebody cut flowers to beautify their neighborhood. That's not going to last. I'd rather come into that same village with dirty water and say, that's terrible. I am so sorry. We'd love to set up a factory in your village. We'd love to set up a business where your breadwinners can have gainful employment. You guys can address that dirty water. That's far more significant. It's the agency Dana was talking about. It's the ennobling. Arthur Brooks, who endorsed our book, formerly head of a think tank here in Washington, great thinker. He said, couple things if you want to be really unhappy in your life that could happen to you. One is go on welfare. The other is win the lottery. And both of those things is because it's unearned income. Earned income is dignifying. We have felt the discomfort of going to the developing world, big check in hand, saying, would love to help you with this water, whatever you need of this project. Everybody feels awkward about it. Our kids used to say when they're young, we'd go and do this, and I'm glad we did it. They needed to see poverty up close and personal, I think, to really change their perspective. But it was awkward because we were coming in. We may as well have been on white horses, And instead, now when we go to the developing world and we see businesses in which we've invested, we're partners. They're bringing their labor. They're bringing the idea. We're bringing capital. We are partners in that.
We all agree on this. There's such a debilitating factor to poverty and to oppression. They tend to go hand in hand. Government corruption and poverty and illiteracy. Who knows what started what. But we see this lack of dignity. It just becomes this pervasive. A friend of mine described it the other way. The other day he was talking about watching somebody who was cleaning at the Atlanta airport, and he noticed that the guy's head never came up. Mm-hmm. His head stayed down, and he was sharing with me as an example of just something inside the man was missing. He had a job. That's the good news, but he was not feeling the dignity that he was created to feel. As Christians, we're meant to be humble, but not head hangers. We're not meant to be bent over. And so I remember in my own experience in Kyrgyzstan, one of my early acquaintances there was the former CFO of the largest tractor factory in the Soviet Union. His name is Ivan, and would call me. It's not Ivan, for the listener. It's Ivan. And I told him, I said, Ivan, you're the CFO, and this huge factory is empty, but couldn't we restart it? Couldn't because he knew it, he knew the operations of it. He had 4 or 5 managers. He knew it. Could we restart it? And his answer was, just a couple of years after the collapse of the Soviet system. His answer struck me. I've never forgotten it. He said, no, someone will come.
Oh, yeah.
And it struck me that was the most pitiful, immature response. And I realized what was going on. I got mad at him, frankly, but I hope we kept it under control. But I told him, I said, Yvonne, no one is coming. You're here. We can do this. We could restart this business. And he never would take that risk, but others did. Others have stepped up, and you could see the difference. You could feel it when you're in countries that were so far behind and now are beginning. You use the term developing country. They are, in fact, developing. There is a forward motion here, and it's not just a fresh check in the mail from the UK or the US or Canada or whoever is feeling generous that month. Margaret Thatcher, God bless her, said it best: socialism is a tremendous system until you run out of other people's money. and that's, and yeah, I'm picking on socialism, but it's just an example of the sort of poverty perpetuating mindset that meant well. You said it a minute ago. They mean well. And a certain amount of that is helpful, but when that becomes your living system, it's so destructive. It just eats the soul out of a human being.
Wait, I got it. I got a Soviet joke. Good news and bad. And I used to live, by the way, in West Berlin. My claim to fame was I was at the Brandenburg Gate for the famous speech when President Reagan said, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." So anyway, but good news and bad news about Soviet Union. Good news, the price of eggs, only $0.10 a dozen. Bad news, no eggs. It's the profit motive that brings life.
It is. It's the invisible hand that Adam Smith talked about. People call it greedy, but when you stop and think about it, it does work. And once you get over the sort of brainwashing we've all had, you start seeing aligns with Scripture. So you're aligning your money with your faith. That all of this aligns with faith. So I'm curious. Tell me about the book, since I know it's coming out. Is it along the lines of Larry Burkett and all the writing on budgeting and all that? It seems like it's got to be a much bigger purpose than just manage your money well. What is the punchline that would separate it from the various groups out there that are promoting good financial management?
Yeah, well, I would say the main distinctive is that we don't just talk about your spending and your giving, but we talk about your investing and investing with your charitable capital. So like you said, there's even various buckets along your charitable capital that some can be invested in that goose that lays the golden egg, the flywheel effect of so talking about how, and those are new tools that people didn't have at their disposal in the past. And there's so many now kingdom advisors that are certified in this biblical alignment with your money that can also help you think through your financial portfolio. Because again, it'd be very difficult to go through stock by stock to figure out who's doing well in the world and who's not. You don't want to do that. Like even with consumption, it's like, do I really have time to look at the background of every company and see if they have forced labor in their labor supply?
Is coffee really fair trade? I just want a cup of coffee.
Yeah. And there may be certifications or ways that you could, there are tools to kind of look and say which consumptive goods are more aligned with your values or others. But I also find that, again, our consumption is a much smaller pocket than our investable capital. And that is where we really should be having the help. And I was concerned when we paid for an advisor that would cost us a lot to do that. And in fact, the opposite. He has saved us money. He's unleashed new money by this tax harvesting so that we can give more away. And it's just been an amazing process. So I encourage people to think that way.
I agree. I mean, I had my testimonial years. I hired a financial manager almost 30 years ago now. And I did it not for all the right motives. I did it because I was tired of stressing over where to invest. So I hired a guy who was a believer, and we became great friends. But the fruit of that was what you just described: more investable money, more charitable money, more peace of mind. I'm thinking, why doesn't everybody do this? It just makes so much sense. So if I think about a Larry Burkett or I'm drawing a total blank on the most popular, the guy right now, Financial Peace University. Come on, help me out here. He's
fine too. I don't have his name on the tip of my tongue.
I can see it. Dave Ram did. I knew it. That's, by the way, I just turned 70, and I've discovered over the last few years that it will come. It just doesn't come quickly. And I was talking to a physician the other day and told her about this, and she said, "Look, you haven't forgotten it. It's in the filing cabinet. It just takes you longer to find the file." So that's that. When you say I will remember it, you will. It just will take a while. But anyway, the difference, again, in those, I think I'm hearing you guys really chart not a different course, but take the course they were on further, deeper into kingdom implications. They seem to be more about how can I get you out of debt? How can I reduce the stress on your family? All of which is wonderful. But your thinking is really going into deployable capital. Real quickly, I read a book a few years back. I'm sure you've read it, called The Mystery of Capital by Hernando de Soto. And his point was the wealth that exists within Central and South America that is unusable. He uses the term, it's not fungible because there's no clear title, but it's there. And Bill, what you were saying earlier, this massive amount, trillions of dollars that might well be not deployable because we can invest it in IBM, we can invest it in Microsoft, but we're not deploying it in kingdom focused companies because we don't know how.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, we're not aware. And if we are aware, we don't know how to. Can you guys talk to that? Because Danny, you hit something. I've personally wrestled with this, that, I do want to invest in companies that are aligned with my values and my faith. I do want to buy from companies that are aligned. But, okay, which car company is most aligned with my values? That's such a confusing thing. But you guys are taking it somewhere, and I think it's going to have amazing impact on this 99% of the available money to deploy it in the kingdom way. Talk to that a little bit.
Well, one area is when you're investing in private companies. Okay. So that wouldn't be necessarily the largest part of your investment portfolio, but there are public companies now that are Christian run funds and people who are intentionally thinking about what kind of kingdom values are expressed in the companies that you're investing in. But let's say in the private market, especially with a lot of these businesses' mission, I think a lot of people don't understand the joy of feeling like you're part of the building process, right? So you're maybe not the entrepreneur that's building that factory in Kyrgyzstan or wherever, but when you invest with them and you are getting their quarterly report and you're seeing the building go up and you're writing their struggles and you're praying for them and you've heard about new ways that they're engaging the church or the local population, there's just such an amazing feeling of partnership and joy. So I feel like that's one of the areas that Bill and I love the most is we don't feel that far away from people all around the globe because we're so involved in their what they're supposed to be building. And we feel a part of the building because capital is part of the building process. And so I think it's like joining arms with brothers and sisters around the world very tangibly. So that's one area. Now, of course, you can't have that kind of in-depth relationship with every company you're investing in, but you can pick and choose. And the joy that comes along with that is just so much fun. And when you can do it as a couple, it even ties your mission together, your family mission more, and bring in the kids. And kids now today want to be part of impactful businesses. They understand that that investment has an impact, and they want to see a positive impact. So
I'm going to jump in and I'm going to call on Bill because Bill's head was going up and down again, and it's very clear that he thinks the same way you guys, you both do. But I'm thinking like my daughters both are very kingdom focused in their lives and they're in the middle of raising their family, but investment wise they would think this way. But they're like the minority, and I'm looking at this new generation come along. My kids are kind of half Gen X, half the millennials, but the new Gen Z generation coming along is the most cause oriented, the most justice oriented in the truest sense. And I was a Vietnam rebel. I lived through all that wonderful stuff. And yeah, I had a cause. I didn't want to go die in jungles of Vietnam. But this is not about saving my hide. This is about changing the world. I see it this generation, and I'm fearful. Maybe that's not the right word, but I'm concerned that if we, the Christian church, doesn't step up and show them a pathway, that this opportunity will pass us by, and that action for justice will turn into cynicism, and they'll just go the opposite way. If we don't give them a cause, they'll go to a dark cause, and so I think this is a moment in history that is very special. Bill, you were nodding your head, and
I think there's some good news here, though, Mike. So you have both supply and demand. If this had been 20 years ago, there might have been some demand, but there wasn't the supply. And what I mean by that is, it is now far easier to find somebody to help you align your money, all of your money, with your faith than it was then. Dana already mentioned Kingdom Advisors, the certified financial advisors who are going to think not just about investments and not just about risk returns. They're going to think about faith alignment. They're going to think about your charitable giving. They're going to think the whole ball of wax. But when we first talked about this when we started hearing about faith-aligned investing, faith-driven investing, Dana got kind of freaked out about it. She's like, what am I going to do? Start studying every stock that we buy? And who do you believe? How is that plausible? We don't need to do that anymore. Do you know that there are 250 faith-driven funds, funds, where you can put your money in the U.S. alone? There are a fund of funds. You just have to find the ones that you feel good about and you feel aligned with. There are so many opportunities to do this. Journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. For all of your listeners who are like, oh my gosh, wait, this is too much. Just start somewhere. This is not, you can't boil the ocean. This is one step at a time. You got to figure out, start with a Crown Financial Ministries, take an online course, read a book, read our book, Stewards, Not Owners. But do something.
Coming out March 11th, which in real time is tomorrow.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. And but there's so many other great books. We're just one of many. And just start doing one thing at a time and make it a joyful journey. Not like a guilt-inducing, guilt-ridden journey of self-flagellation. Think, my goodness, how am I actually unleashing power in the world for the kingdom of God through money that heretofore has been lying fallow? You're planting seeds and you're making a difference. And, there'll be some money that's always outside of your reach. I cannot really touch my 401k money. It's just that I have a few different opportunities through Charles Schwab. I don't have a lot of latitude. But when I hit 59 and a half, I moved as much of that I could over to an IRA where I have latitude, right? And so that I can get more money freed up under my disposal, our disposal, to figure out how it can be aligned with our faith. So step by step.
I was going to ask you, to give us, both of you, to give us a kind of, we started off in the beginning, what's the punchline you want people to get? And now in the end, with what's the action that you want people to take? You kind of went there, but Bill, continue to start, and then Dane, I'm going to let you have the last word. But what's the action? Because I agree with what you said, Bill, that we've gone from a place where I had no options to I've got too many options, and I'm getting lost in the I'm Robin Williams in the grocery store, Moscow on the Hudson. I'm hyperventilating over the number, just the coffee cans. What's an action that our listeners can take if they're not in the BAM world, or they're kind of just getting into this idea? Well, frankly, there are people that have been in it for 30 years that don't know what to do. What can we do in this part?
Number one, surrender. It's all God's money. Surrendering all of your money is not the same as giving away all of your money. He made you to be a steward. And there may be people for whom the Lord asks them to give away all their money. That, I think, is pretty extraordinary, because the Lord also tells us to be like the ant, storing up for the future. And we don't want to become dependent on the government, on our families or whatnot. So start with surrender your money. study scripture, take a Crown ministry course. If you don't have a financial advisor, get one who's Kingdom certified. If you have one, think about switching to one who's going to think more than just about your risk tolerance. Keep track of all of your expenses, because it's really hard to live an examined life when you don't really know where your money's going. Do that for a few months and then see where that goes. Live below your means. Really important. It's just like one of the superpowers in life is living below your means. And then get into a community with other people. Find some people with whom you can actually have honest conversations about money. There's a few topics that are totally off, out of bounds for most people at a cocktail party. 3 of my favorite topics: God, politics, and money. And we'd add fourth, death. Our kids tell us that there's 2 things we talked a lot about with our kids growing up: money and death. Anyway, but find some people with whom you can have some really honest conversations so that it's not just you alone trying to figure this out.
That's the point no one ever brings up. The others, I've heard bits and pieces here and there. Nobody's given me quite the list you gave me. But that idea of get some people around you to do this with you, to walk with you, no one said that before. I think that's fantastic advice. Dana, you get the last word. Tell us what to do.
Yeah, well, I would say if you know the calling and passion, the broken area that you're supposed to move into, but you're not ready to invest just yet, find others that are doing that in the BAM world and offer to maybe advise them. Maybe you've got business acumen that you can share. Ask them if you can come along, on Zoom to learn more about what they're doing. There's plenty of groups where you can help give business input into business's mission companies. I would recommend Lion's Den. Once a month, they have a practice pitch where people can both learn how to become a capital raiser and how to be a capital provider, both in a redemptive way. So I encourage you to go to Lion's Den DFW or Faith Driven Investor. Faith Driven Entrepreneur has all kinds of wonderful small groups that are around this. Listen to the BAM, all the past BAM podcasts. There's, I'm sure, many people who could enliven your imagination of the creative ways people are solving global problems in God's way. So I would just encourage you to just open your mind to what the Lord would have, and it doesn't have to start with parting with your money. Part with your talent, part with your time.
Both of you said something really critical, and I'll kind of wrap up with this, and then we'll sign off. But if you think about it, Bill, you said it. Surrendering your money doesn't mean giving all your money away. Huge issue. It might. It's not that it's never happened, but people think one equals the other versus no, God, it's yours anyway. I'm only acknowledging what is, but it's yours to do with what you please, and I accept that. That's a huge step that the boogeyman tries to keep us from taking. And the other, is what you just said, Dana, this idea that I've got nothing to give. I have no connection. I have nowhere to go. Well, yeah, you do. You have lots of places you can go, like Lion's Den, like FDE, FDI, BAM Global, who have these things are out there now, and we can connect. And the good news is nothing bad's going to happen to you. But because of that, bad things may happen to you, but it's not living because you chose to do that. So, Bill and Dana Wichterman, thank you so much for being with us. This has been fun. We technically went overtime, but I don't care. I'm having a good time. I'd love to talk with you further. For those listening, please, the book comes out. It's already be out by the time you get this episode on your phone. Get a copy, read it, but catch the message of where it's going. I love where this is headed. This is not just do the Dave Ramsey snowball. This is not just do keeping up with your expenses per Larry Burkett. It has all that in it, but this is a direction. This is to me, it's kind of a quantum leap in Christian financial thinking on a personal level. And so I encourage you to get it. I love the subtitle, The Joy of Aligning Your Money with Your Faith. Bringing this huge piece, Jesus, we all know this. Jesus said more about money than he said about heaven or hell. So this is getting your money, this big part of our lives, lined up with what we say we believe. I love this and look forward to it. So much we could talk about. Thanks for being with us. We'll have you back on soon. Friends, please, if you like this episode, please like it, refer a friend to it, give us a rating, help us get this message out. This is the kind of thinking that you need, that I need, and that's the whole idea, just to get this out with many people as possible. Bill and Dana, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.